All right, everybody, so welcome back to another episode of Colton Posey Fishing. Today we're going to be talking about the summer transition. And you know, this is kind of one of those for not necessarily the people who are new into bass fishing. Okay, so you know, if you're a veteran angler, I may bring up some stuff that you may not have ever really thought about. Summer is just my favorite time to fish. You know, I understand the boat traffic's heavy. I understand there's a lot of stuff going on. The fishing pressure's typically heavy. It can get really tough, but it can also be really fun. The metabolisms of these fish are going way up. They're hungry, they're ready to eat, they like hitting moving stuff, they like, you know, moving fast. I mean, it's just my type of fishing. So either way, we're going to talk about the summer transition. Where does these fish go? What's going on? We're going to break down all that stuff. So stay tuned. This is something you don't want to miss. All right, everybody, so like always, if you're new here, make sure to hit that thumbs up button, especially if you like this kind of content. It's a great way to help support the channel. Also, subscribe down below. I got you covered every Monday, Thursday, and Friday with bass fishing tips, tricks, behind the scenes, all kinds of good stuff. You never know what I'll be posting except for on Fridays. It's pretty common with a weekly fishing report. Also, comment down below if you ever have any questions or anything you want to add, or you just want to talk fishing. I love hearing from you guys, and it's a great way to help support the channel, gets us in the algorithm. All right, everybody, so summer transition, what's going on? We're, you know, like what is going to be, you know, that typical pattern we're going to see during the summer transition? And one of the things I want you to understand is we're coming out of that spawn and post-spawn era. So, you know, the water temps are really warming up. We're talking 80s and higher. What happens is these fish, their metabolism goes up. Also with the bait fish, their metabolisms go up. Everything's got to eat more and everything's moving quicker. You know, it's kind of like being in a room that's extremely cold. You want to just sit down and cover up, right? If you're in a room that's too hot, you just want to cool off. If you're in a room that's really comfortable, you typically want to get up and do stuff. So it's the same with the fish. You know, the water temps are comfortable for them. They're really pushing bait. And the bait's going to be moving out towards the main lake, and you're going to see those fish on the main lake right now as you're watching the video and stuff, and you're going to see a lot of those bass out on the main lake starting to school up and chase this bait and stuff. If you're on a typical reservoir, your typical lake systems and rivers and stuff like that, the thermocline's developing in that 15 to 20 foot range, and these fish are typically going to keep these bait fish pushed up shallow. If they're chasing them out on points and stuff, they're not typically going to go really far out. They're going to keep those fish or those bait fish right around that point. One of the main things I can tell you about summer fishing is no matter what bait you're using, unless you're just trying to drag something across bottom, even then, speed kills. So whether I'm choosing a jerk bait, a spinner bait, crank baits, swim baits, it doesn't really matter. I'm going to be moving that bait very quickly. I want stuff that's really erratic. It's kind of like the analogy that I use all the time, that hot potato method. Somebody throws something at you don't necessarily want to catch, but it's your initial reaction to grab it. But here's the thing, when you're using your baits and you're getting bites and you're catching fish, pay real close attention how they're eating that bait, especially in the summer. So if you're catching those fish and you're barely getting them hooked on their lip or something like that, there could be simple things that you're doing wrong that could increase your hang-up ratio, such as integrate a pause while you're using the bait, change the color of the bait, speed it up even more, slow it down just a little bit. You got to play with these baits this time of year and really see what they want. But 99% of the time you can really burn that bait, especially early in the mornings, and those fish are just going to absolutely slay it. The areas that I typically always want to check, you know, we always talk about points, but nobody really talks about like what point is better than another point, or why this certain point that somebody's fishing is better than the other point. Well, there's a multitude of things. Typically on points, I want hard bottom, okay? So that's one of the first things I'm gonna check for when I'm fishing a new lake or a new area or something like that, and I'm looking for a point to fish. I don't know what it is exactly about bass and hard bottom, maybe because sometimes they push the bait down and the bait can't really get in the mud or anything like that and kind of move through the mess, or I don't really know, but the bass really like hard bottom. So the first thing I'm going to check for is hard bottom. Now if you don't have sonar, one of the best things you can do to identify hard bottom is just use your eyes. If you see rocks on the bank or something like that, then there's typically going to be hard bottom for a long ways out or through the entire point. The other thing I'm going to look for is submerged vegetation, okay? So if you have submerged vegetation and a hard bottom, that's typically a wonderful area, because those fish are going to use that vegetation to, you know, hide and camouflage themselves, and the bait fish are going to be trying to do the same thing. The bass is going to use every bit of that to pin those fish, whether that's pinning them up against the surface, on the bottom, pinning them up into little corners close to the bank and stuff like that. Especially with that thermocline developing, you'll see that a lot. You'll see those bass chasing shad like super shallow. I'm talking like just a little bit of water. And then the very last thing when looking for points is looking for those points that come out further than you know, the rest of them. So if I've got 3 points in a row that's a couple hundred yards from each other, the one that sticks out the farthest is probably going to be the best one to fish most of the time. Now the other thing, you know, I've heard this pretty much my whole life fishing. There's a lot of people that's like, I just don't want to go fishing today, it's going to be windy. And I completely understand. It can be very difficult in windy situations, especially if you don't have like spot lock and stuff like that. This time of year, wind blown main lake areas is typically going to tell you everything you need to know about how the bass are positioning, whether you're on a highland reservoir, whether you're on, you know, your regular like just regular lake system, or if you're on, you know, a river system. Which on river systems, current plays a lot, but also wind does too. But looking for those wind blown areas, whether it's on a north bank, a southern bank, a east bank, a west bank, it doesn't really matter. As long as that area is getting a lot of wind, you will typically find fish in the area. And if you keep covering those areas and start figuring out little bait patterns, then you're really going to start picking apart and get into a really deep pattern. Okay, these points that are coming out really far, 99% of the fish are sitting at the very tip of the point, okay, just, you know, 2 foot deep, and then you can kind of run that all around your lake. But, you know, just covering a lot of water, looking for wind-blown areas, points with hard bottoms, submerged vegetation. Now, if your points that you're looking for on your lake, every lake's different, but if your points on your lake don't have all of those features, try to pick them apart with, you know, okay, this one has rocks, this one only has vegetation, this one only comes out, you know, 50 yards from the bank, or whatever the case may be. Just pick apart what you got. You can only work with what you got. So, you know, don't get caught up on every one of those features, but if you see every one of those features on the point, that will usually tell you that that area right there is going to be more productive than other areas around it. It's just a great place for schooling bass to congregate and feed all summer long. They got a deep water access close by, and then they've got shallow water access close by. They have hard bottom to do whatever they like to do on hard bottom with, put their bellies on the ground or something like that. And then they've got vegetation to hide up in, camouflage themselves, and the bait fish feel comfortable and get lazy, and then the bass can come up and eat on them and stuff like that. So, you know, either way, move your baits quick, keep your eyes open, use your sonar if you got it. If you don't have your sonar, use your eyes. Your eyes is going to be your biggest feature. I do have live scope on my boat, but I use my eyes still more than anything. It's just the way that I you know, prefer to fish. I just catch a lot more fish doing that. So either way, guys, if the video helps you at all, make sure to hit that thumbs up button. It helps me out a ton. Subscribe down below. We're on our way to 20,000 subscribers. That's my goal by the end of this year. If you can contribute to that, it's free and it would help me out a ton. Also, comment down below if you ever have any questions, anything you want to add, or you just want to talk fishing. I love hearing from you guys. I'll see you next time.